This is Dennis Ramundi. I'm here with my co-host, Phil Goldberg, author of American Veda. Our podcast, Spirit Matters Talk, found at spiritmatterstalk.com. Our guest today, Carin Gorell. She is the editor-in-chief of Yoga Journal, and she is living in Boulder, Colorado, where she practices yoga and lives a very healthy lifestyle. Boulder being very conducive to that. Prior to Yoga Journal, she was the feature director of Self Magazine. Carin, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Carin, let's begin by giving the listeners a little bit of knowledge about your own background and how you came to be editor-in-chief of Yoga Journal. And while you're at it, throw in a little Yoga Journal history. It's like 40th anniversary.
Sure. Okay, so I have been a magazine editor now for probably 17 or 18 years. And, I spent most of my career up until I moved here to Boulder in New York City. And I've always been in the health and wellness realm. So, I was at Self for a long time. Before that, I was at Redbook. I was at Psychology Today. And I've always just been really passionate about wellness, physical health, mental and spiritual health. And I was in college. I studied pre-med and then psychology. And, I ended up at Psychology Today and kind of went from there. So it's a personal passion. And I started practicing yoga in 2001. So that was just something that I've been doing throughout, my adult life, which is great. So then when this opportunity came up, it was such a great fit. And I was looking to actually leave New York because I was starting a family and ready to kind of slow down my lifestyle a little bit. And, the stars aligned. So I got to move out here and take over a couple of years ago. So that was great. And, and so when I came on, we were looking ahead at Yoga Journal to the 40th anniversary and what we would do to help celebrate that. And it's a pretty awesome accomplishment, especially in these days of magazines that come and go. But, last year was our 40th anniversary. We put out a very special edition that was dedicated to not really even just Yoga Journal's history, but the yogis who have been instrumental in bringing yoga into America and making it what it is today. So to do that, we launched our first ever Good Karma Awards, and we recognized 40 different teachers who have just been, again, instrumental in bringing yoga to America, and teachers who have been teaching for 40 plus years and giving back to their communities. And it was just a really nice celebration of where we've been and where we're going to and how much yoga is growing. When Yoga Journal started, it was like a 12-page black and white stapled together edition. And now we're this beautiful, glossy magazine with 2.2 million readers.
Wow.
So, yeah. Big
Would you like to pay homage to Rama Vernon and Judith Lassiter and others who started it?
Yeah, where would we be without them? And, Judith especially has just been fantastic. She's so smart, and she's just kind of a sage to us. So she was one of the people that we recognized as one of our Good Karma Award winners as a lifetime contributor. And she actually also served on our advisory board to help choose who, we really deemed was most worthy. There were so many people to consider, but, she helped us sort of narrow down those decisions. And she's just wonderful and wise, and we're grateful to her and all of the original founders of Yoga Journal.
Mm-hmm. Carin, I wanted to ask you. I have in front of me the 2016 Yoga in America study conducted by the Yoga Journal and Yoga Alliance, and I'm reading here. The numbers are staggering. Since 2012, there were 20.4 million people in America who considered themselves yoga practitioners, and now there are 36 million. So in a short period of time, it's jumped tremendously. And I, like Phil, got involved with meditation and yoga back in the late 60s, early 70s in New York City. And it was, there weren't many folks around doing anything like that. It was kind of odd. And when we say yoga Yeah, now we're mostly referring to the yoga asanas, hatha yoga. Back then, it was mostly people who were seeking God, seeking enlightenment, that would
Hmm.
enter into yoga, into meditation. Now, do you find the profile of the folks, the millions and millions of folks that are practicing yoga now? Do you find them in there for a wide range of reasons, a wide range of goals?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's still definitely that population who's coming to it for the more spiritual aspects. But, you know, it's just, I mean, it's huge. And I think a large pathway into the practice is the physical, the asana, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm fine with that. You know, that if you come to yoga
Hmm.
because it's for strength training or, you know, for the workout, whatever that might be, great, because odds are if you like it and you stay with it long enough, then you're going to, you know, discover all of the other wonderful, important things about yoga. But the fitness aspect for sure, I think a lot of people are using it to cope, you know. Right. So, I mean, we're finding that, yes, a lot of people are still coming to yoga for the more spiritual aspects. That's definitely a large part of the population. But, you know, these days, a good number of people are coming for the physical aspects, for the fitness part of it. And honestly, that's completely fine with me. If you're coming, for whatever reason, you're coming to your mat, I'm really happy about it. You know, if it's just for the good workout, because if you come and you like it, then you're going to stay and, you know, hopefully get into the deeper parts of the practice. But, you know, in addition to fitness, I think a lot of people are coming to yoga just to cope with the high levels of stress and anxiety and that we're dealing with in the world and just trying to find more life balance.
Carin, if I could pick up on that, I'm looking at the study now, and according to the results, the top 5 reasons for starting yoga are flexibility, stress relief, general fitness, improve overall health, and physical fitness. So that would indicate that most people see yoga as an exercise, a form of physical exercise or fitness that's good for health. We know, as you suggest, that a lot of people then move on to the deeper aspects of yoga. Do we have any indication of how many are interested in the larger picture of yoga, the more holistic and what we could think of as the spiritual tradition that yoga comes from?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at how yoga practitioners, and this was also something we had in the study, if you look at how they talk about their practice, you know, how they compare themselves to people who don't practice yoga, the number one thing that they were more likely to report was mental clarity. So that, to me, kind of gets into that realm of the mental and the spiritual aspects, you know. And then that is followed by good balance, which could be interpreted as physical balance or it could be interpreted as life balance, flexibility. And I think, honestly, that's a very common gateway into yoga because a lot of people won't do yoga because they think they're not flexible enough. And then others will say, I need to be more flexible, so I'm going to try yoga. And then physical agility and strength. So I don't have a hard number on the number of people who are interested in that, but I think, you know, I think a lot are, and our audience certainly is. I mean, that's one of the top things that they come to us for. They're looking for inspiration for their practice, and they're looking for calm.
Right.
You know, they don't even call it stress relief. They just are looking for calm and peace of mind and tranquility. So, I think, and you know, I think that again comes with a little more time on the mat when you recognize how much more you can get out of the practice.
Right. You know, it's interesting, Carin. I don't think most people know what spirituality is until they experience it. And I know over the years a number of people that have gone to yoga classes thinking, you know, I just want to be able to stretch better. It might make me a better, you know, runner. It might make me a better athlete, or might get away with my back pain. And then they go and they actually have this experience of this deep silence, this inner peacefulness, and they come away saying, "What was that?" And then the teacher might point to them out to them, hey, man, that is spirituality. That's a deep spiritual experience. And then all of a sudden, their motivations, their feelings about a change. Yes, I still want to be the good athlete. Yes, I still want to get rid of the back pain. But there's really more to this than I thought. And so, for me, same thing with meditation. It doesn't always matter why the person starts or what they, people start meditation because they want to be able to sleep better. And yet, what they're really ultimately developing is a deeper inner wakefulness. And of course,
Hmm.
the same thing happens with yoga asanas. And so I think that many people are practicing it for reasons of spirituality, but they would not necessarily articulate it that way. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, I think that still a lot of people associate spirituality maybe with with a religion, with a specific
Hmm.
religion. And obviously it doesn't have to be that. I mean, it can be for you if that's what you want it to be, but yeah, and maybe they just don't know how to define it, but I would totally agree with that.
Carin, in this finding that there are 36 million practitioners, was there a definition of practitioners? What does being a yoga practitioner mean in the context of numbers like that?
That is a good question. I would have to call up the study for that, but I think we asked specifically. It was a matter of how often do you practice, and it was, I want to say it was 2 or more times a week. Do you practice yoga? So a lot of it was based on that, just to like.
And when you say practice yoga,
Mm-hmm.
there are, in addition to or overlapping this number of 36 million people, there are an awful lot of people, and a lot of them are the generation of practitioners that Dennis and I represent, going back to the 60s, who don't have an asana practice, don't
Right.
get yoga classes, but are dedicated meditators or bhaktas, and they might go to kirtan, they might meditate every day, but asana is not a part of or a big part of their practice like it is in the hatha yoga world.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if they're included, and if you didn't include, if they're not, that would raise the number of real yogis to a larger extent, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. I'm fairly certain that we included that as part of the definition. Could be meditation, could be a pranayama practice, all of the different things that are considered, not just do you flow vinyasa, and work up a sweat 2 times a week.
Good, good.
Right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would add to that as a piece of advice for listeners that I'm a person that's practiced meditation for over 40 years very regularly, but hasn't really done yoga asanas in a regular way. But my commitment now and what I should have done earlier on was balance it more, because if you're going to spend a lot of time in meditation, it's really important, I think, especially as you get older, to have the physical aspect there too, because one supports the other. And
Hmm.
if you want to continue to have growth and good clarity in meditation, your body has to be attuned to being able to do that. And there's nothing better for that than hatha yoga.
Hmm.
So it's a and
I agree. And sometimes the best way for me to meditate is through that movement, like
mhm.
getting focused in that space and it just kind of blocks out all of the rest of it. Not always, but it can be a really helpful tool in meditation.
Well, that was its original purpose, as we know from the history of yoga.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of meditators who don't do asanas, and a lot of asana doers who don't meditate. So I'm sure in the end they'll all balance if through the course of evolution. Now,
Right.
one of the results of the study is kind of perfectly obvious if you ever go to a yoga studio, and that is almost 3/4 of the practitioners are women.
Right.
And if you look at the pages of Yoga Journal, that reinforces that percentage. Do you have any theories why that is so?
I mean, I can make some guesses. But I would say first that we are seeing growth among male practitioners, which I think is great.
Do you think it's because they know that's where the women are?
I have heard that. I'm sure that's true for some people. And yeah, it's funny. I've heard guys say, wow, we really should tell our friends to come to these Yoga Journal conferences because that's really where all the girls are.
we have to say, in that regard, listeners, listen to our interview with Russell Simmons.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's how he got into yoga.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway,
I mean, it happens.
Yes. But go ahead, please, get back to the original.
Well, so why men don't practice? I mean, I think, one thing might be the flexibility issue, that they feel they aren't flexible enough and you have to be super bendy and super fit to do yoga. I think, I've talked to some guys about this, and one guy said was, we don't see progress, quote unquote, as quickly. Like when you're just talking about asana and, not to stereotype, but sometimes that's the more thing that guys are focused on is the physicality of things. Can I do this? There's maybe a little bit of a competitive nature about it, or, just not wanting to be embarrassed because their body can't do what everybody else is doing in class. Mm-hmm. And, women do tend to be more flexible than men. So it might take longer for a guy to get into a pose, and that could be frustrating and off-putting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, maybe some of them are turned off by the spiritual aspect of it, that it feels like, what is this? Is this, some sort of woo-woo thing, or is it a religion, or that's not what I'm looking for. So, I think we've come a long way in recent years, especially if you look at these numbers and growth of yoga practitioners, it says as much, but in educating people about what yoga is and making it more accessible and not so intimidating or not such a sort of exclusive group. And that's why we're seeing the growth, but there could obviously be more of that.
Right. And I think in general, most studies bear out that women generally take better care of their health than men, especially if they're doing something proactive. And I'll give you one example. There's been a dramatic increase in the number of people that are living to be over 100. That's the good news. The bad news for Phil and I is 80% of those people are women. So, and I think this is indicative of that. Another group of people I want to ask about is young people, children, high school students. Do you see, and I don't know if it was in the survey or not, an increase in the number of participants in yoga classes amongst younger people, or is it something that people generally get into when they're college age or older?
Right. We are seeing a growth in younger people, which is great. I mean, I'm looking at our age distribution here, and 19% of the practitioners are aged 18 to 29. And we had a high percentage of people who said that their kids had practiced yoga with them. So to me, that's exciting. These older generation are passing down this practice to their kids, and I think we're going to see even more growth in that area. I do notice just from our sort of internal research looking at our audience that it does seem like somewhere around the early to mid 30s is where a practice sticks, where it becomes, something that is a regular part of their lifestyle that they do, regularly, even daily in their lives, whether it's, meditating or breathing or an asana. It's like that's kind of the point where the switch goes on and they realize it's a lifestyle, a long-term, lifelong lifestyle that they stick to. You know what I mean?
That may explain why there was a surprisingly high percentage of people showed up in the survey who were over 50. I did not expect that, but it probably reflects what you just said. They learned it as they were coming into young middle age in their 30s and 40s, and then persisted with it. Yeah.
I mean, that's our other area of growth, really, that we're seeing in the 50 up range, 50 and 60 years. So if you see, 17% are ages 50 to 59, and then 21% are 60 and older. Yeah. So I think what you're saying is certainly true. And then I think, it's just being introduced to them in ways that maybe it wasn't before. So for instance, their doctors, more and more doctors are recommending yoga now as something they can do to as part of their total health regimen to feel good or heal from an injury or recover after, cancer treatment. And there's a lot of research out there now showing that yoga is very beneficial for that. So I think, that might be part of that growth in the older population as well.
Right. I always felt, Carin, that yoga should be and meditation should be integrated into high school curriculums. I think that's so in college also, but really give it to kids when they can benefit from it. It was interesting. Last year, a couple of years ago, there was a situation in Encinitas, California, where I spent part of the year, where they did. First of all, there's a yoga studio on every other corner in Encinitas, and they actually had gotten it into the public schools there in the high school as part of physical education.
Dennis, it was a grade school
And middle school. But anyway, wherever they had it, it was challenged in court as being a religious practice, and it was fought in court and won, and the yoga people won. So they have been successful in getting it into schools. And I think the more of that, if that could be the next wave of yoga asanas and meditation, that it's actually integrated into a school program on a voluntary basis, so nobody feels forced into it. I think so many kids could benefit from it at that age. And once they get the basics of how to do it, they may do it, they may not do it, but at some point in their life, they'll have that tool to work with. They'll have that ability, and that's an age when they're very flexible. So it's easy to turn them teach them in a correct way. So I don't know if you ever had any articles in regard to that, bringing it into the schools or whatnot, but I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, well, we did cover that case in California, and I was obviously very excited about the outcome. We've also had conversations with Congressman Tim Ryan, who's in Ohio, who's done a lot of work on getting yoga and meditation into grade schools there, and it's been really successful. And he's, if you ever talk to him, he'll tell you some amazing stories about the turnaround that these kids have, just in terms of mood regulation and communicating better with their peers and grades even and that sort of thing. But I couldn't agree more. I think the more we can get, as you say, on a volunteer basis, but I think especially meditation and breathing practices are huge for kids, and they really respond to it. I have a 2-year-old, and we do breathing exercises together, and I was shocked how quickly he got it and how quickly it really does work to calm him down and, get him out of that terrible tantrum that he has at least once a day.
Interesting. Carin, I'm going to ask you some controversial stuff about Yoga Journal.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't have to be controversial, but you know probably as well as I do that a lot of people in the yoga world and people who care about this are critical of Yoga Journal because for a few reasons. One is the lack of diversity in the imagery being used, and that is, I shouldn't say that's just Yoga Journal, but it's a critique of the whole yoga studio world that tends to be white and upscale and that sort of thing. And the other is you've been accused of sort of perpetuating this image of yoga as glamorous and something for beautiful people, and not reflective of just the way ordinary people look, and the diversity of America. Could you address that and let us know if yeah?
Yeah. Yes, I've heard the criticism. Obviously, I'm very aware of it, and I'm very sensitive to it. One of the things that was very important to me when I came on board at Yoga Journal was getting more diversity into the magazine, and I think I've done a lot of that. We've had, in the last year, we've had 2 African Americans and 2 Asian Americans at least on the cover. So, I've kind of addressed a lot of that head on. I try to include diversity in every issue of the magazine. I try to include different body types. I try to include men, at least one male in the issue every month. To be honest, it's kind of hard to find a good mix of people because I'm also talking to teachers, and I need, I'm looking for really well-respected, high-caliber teachers, and then also that I can get to. We're here in Boulder, which is a little bit of a constraint, to be honest. If you've been to Colorado, there's very little diversity here.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. So I try as often as I can to bring different folks in, and we just finished shooting in New York City and in LA, so we could, try to find some more of those other faces of yoga to represent in the magazine. So I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. We're not, we're just not, but I'm trying really hard to.
We demand old fat men.
We are available. Yeah, I think it's great that you're aware of it and you're making the effort. And I think all those things will come in time. And I think I think one of the things that's happening was, I think yoga, was very much it started out with hippies maybe, but then went into the upper middle classes and all. But now you're finding it everywhere, talking to all kinds of people that are doing it. So I think it'll naturally evolve and change, and then be reflected in what's is covered in regard to it. There's a big, a lot of people are coming into the United States from different parts of the world. It's a country of immigrants, and a lot of that wave of immigrants in recent years has come from Korea, from China, from India, for places where they have deep spiritual traditions. Has that affected the world of yoga? Are there different schools of yoga more now because of that, or people coming in who have been practicing for generations, or not?
Not that I know of. Maybe, but it's not really something that I've been seeing, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think probably my own observation is, we assume people coming maybe from India or China or whatever have these spiritual practices built into their daily life, but in fact they don't. And it's and in many cases actually there's been some rejection of that, and they're looking more to the modern and technological developments of the West, and then after time come back to that. Phil?
Carin, let me ask you something about the survey again.
Sure.
It was done in conjunction with Yoga Alliance.
Yeah.
Would a skeptical outsider look at some of the results and say, well, did they have a vested interest in finding certain things? Could this, are the findings reliable? Would they be duplicatable by outside people?
No, it's a very valid question, but that's why we went with a third party to actually do the research. Yeah, it was very important to us individually, a yoga journal, to have that clear, reliable, unbiased information, and to Yoga Alliance as well. So sure, the questions that we were asking, a lot of them, it's stuff that we want to know. And Yoga Alliance had a lot of questions that were teacher specific, but we all were very clear on the fact that we wanted to make sure that the numbers we got were, numbers we could stand behind and that were not biased.
Carin, were there any results of the study that surprised you?
Well, just the math. I got to be honest. I was frankly shocked to see how much growth. I mean, the numbers have almost doubled. That was the huge one. You go into something like that, like our last study was in 2012 at 20.2 million practitioners, I think. And, even at that point, you felt like, wow, can it get any bigger? I mean, yoga's so huge right now, and can it get any bigger? And so we fielded this study with our fingers crossed that we were right. We sensed that there was growth. We're seeing growth. We hoped it was right, but when that came back, it was honestly just like shocking and exciting. And to me says, this isn't just a trend that's going to go away. I'm really hopeful that it's growing because people are really resonating with the practice, and that it will stick and continue to grow.
Carin, one of the findings that I found really interesting was the number or the percentage of people who want to be yoga teachers.
Right.
And I thought, my God, do we need more? Because, seriously, this is one of the...
One out of every two, right?
This is, when I wrote American Veda, which came out in 2010, I quoted The Onion, the satirical magazine, did a headline, something like, 1 in 5 American women are yoga teachers, or something to that effect.
And joke.
That might wind up to be an understatement, Phil. Yeah.
I know, but it's a serious question, because one of the critiques of the contemporary hatha yoga scene is that in the attempt to meet the demand on the one, or frankly, a lot of people have been accused of trying to bring in more money by having teacher training programs, that the quality of training is diminished by that, and you have people teaching yoga who have only been practicing and immersed in the tradition for a couple of years or a few years. And is that a concern of Yoga Journal as the sort of voice of modern yoga?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really valid point. One thing I will say is that, yeah, the number is huge, but we're also finding that of those people, the vast majority of them don't actually intend to teach.
Right.
So what they're doing is they're just passionate about yoga, and they want to deepen their practice.
Right.
And one way of doing that is a 200-hour teacher training. So I think that's great. And, but I agree that we need to be careful about making sure that the teachers who do come out and start getting in front of the class are well trained and have that they're safe. And so it is a concern, and it's something that we're definitely watching closely.
Right. I think it's like aerobics or anything else. People ultimately will seek out those that are best trained and most skilled.
Yes.
And even though there may be a zillion teachers. Carin, I want to thank you so very much for your time today. And any final points that you'd like to make, or any comments, Phil, you have you'd like to make?
I would like to ask Carin what she sees for the future of the magazine as she moves into this new 5th decade of Yoga Journal. Yeah.
Thank you. I think looking at all the things that we've talked about today, I think it's my goal is to continue to reflect and better reflect the community, and it's, as we've discussed, it's changing, it's growing. It's older, it's younger, there's more men, there's more diversity, and I love that, and I really want to make sure that I'm addressing everyone as best I possibly can, and make sure that they all feel really welcome, coming to the magazine, coming to our events. One of the things that we're doing this year is a 6-month road trip around the country, where we're literally crisscrossing the country from New York over to San Diego and back again, to get out there in the community and meet all of these new people and old people who, longtime practitioners who are doing yoga, and get to know them and get to really immerse ourselves in the community and see what's happening out there that, in these little pockets around the country. So we're excited about that, and that's really it, better reflecting the community and growing it.
How can folks find out about that tour and where it's going to be, and how they can plug into it?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's yogajournal.com/livebyoga, and the tour launches in April. So pretty soon we'll actually have content up on the website, and you can start to actually track the tour and come join us, because we'll be making 50+ stops along the way at different studios and festivals and events around the country. And we want everyone to come and hang out with us and talk to us and practice with us. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
so when you get to LA,
April,
I'll look forward.
Yeah,
I'll look forward to meeting you in LA.
Yeah.
Yes, we will be spending lots of time in California.
Yeah, and I should say, people who want more information, let us know. Contact Phil or me, and we'll get you that information. Carin, thank you so very much for your time. I'm here with my co-host Phil Goldberg, our guest today, Carin Gorell, Editor-in-Chief of Yoga Journal. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Carin.